My name is Serena Hale, and I'm 27 years old. And after everything that happened that night, I don't think I could ever look at my family the same way again. I still remember the sound of my uncle's laugh, loud, theatrical, splitting through the backyard, like he'd just told the best joke of his life. Still delivering pizzas, huh? He said, making sure everyone within 15 feet could hear him. Well, somebody's got to do it. His voice dripped with mock pity, the kind that wasn't even trying to be subtle. A couple of people chuckled, polite, confused little laughs. They didn't know if they were supposed to laugh or not, but they followed his lead because that's what people did around Uncle Rick. I smiled anyway, hands in my pockets, cool, calm, collected, the way I'd taught myself to be. Inside, that familiar sting tightened somewhere deep in my chest. Not shame, not embarrassment, just that old, stubborn ache of being underestimated again. That's the problem with growing up in a family like mine. They don't see you. They see a version of you they built years ago, and they cling to it until it suffocates you. The string lights above us buzzed faintly, casting warm gold onto the patio, where the catered appetizers and overpriced finger foods sat untouched by half the guests. The whole backyard felt staged elegant but stiff, a place where people pretended to enjoy themselves. Uncle Rick leaned on the grill like he owned the world. He was my dad's younger brother, though you'd never guess it from the way he talked about the past. He'd peaked early some mediocre success, running a chain of auto shops, and somehow turned that into a lifelong personality. His kids went to perfectly average schools, but the way he bragged you'd think they were inventing oxygen. Then there was Andrew, his golden boy. Tall, polished, gelled hair, pressed shirt. The kind of man who looked at women like they were props. The kind of cousin who'd wrapped his masculinity around his ego so tightly he couldn't breathe without checking who was watching. He was 29 and getting engaged that night. The whole event, the music, the carefully curated guest list, the champagne-colored decorations was built around him, around his spotlight. I almost didn't come. I wasn't exactly in the family's display-worthy category, but Mom had asked quietly, gently, "Serena, sweetheart, it would mean a lot if you came. People have been talking." People were always talking, especially when it came to me. I stepped onto the patio and kissed Mom on the cheek. She gave me that look, half relief, half worry, like she wasn't sure if I'd survive an evening in this emotional minefield. Truth was, I wasn't sure either. I found a spot near the railing, observing the scene like an outsider. That's what I'd become since Dad died. He used to be the buffer, the calm, in the storm of sharp elbows and sharper words. Without him, there was no balance, just hierarchy. And at the bottom of that hierarchy, me. Andrew walked out of the house with his fiancée Tessa on his arm. She was beautiful in a quiet, polished way, champagne dress, carefully styled hair, jewelry that whispered money, not screamed it. She smiled at the crowd like she'd rehearsed it. But when her eyes landed on me, something shifted. Her expression faltered, only a fraction, but enough for me to notice. She blinked, her smile dimmed. Then just as quickly she pulled out her phone. She typed, scrolled, stared in. Her face went pale. She nudged Andrew, showed him the screen. His eyes flicked from the phone to me, back to the phone, then to me, again narrowed, confused, trying to reconcile something that suddenly didn't make sense. I took a slow sip of soda, leaning back into the wood railing, pretending I hadn't noticed them at all. Because I knew exactly what she Googled, and I knew exactly what she'd found. The tension rippled silently through the backyard like a shift in air pressure. People kept talking, but they were glancing more, tilting their heads, whispering into wine glasses. They didn't know what was wrong yet, but they felt it. Tessa disappeared inside. Andrew followed her, seconds later, abandoning his own engagement celebration. Uncle Rick squinted after them. Probably cold feet, he joked to his buddies, who laughed too loudly too quickly. The vibe was off, and everyone sensed it. I waited a few minutes before walking inside. No rush, no panic, just quiet certainty. I found them in the hallway near the guest bathroom, huddled together. The phone's glow lit their stunned faces. Andrew's voice was hushed, frantic. "That can't be her. She delivers pizzas. She's always been—" Tessa shook her head, eyes still on the screen. "It's her. It's definitely her." I walked past as if I hadn't heard a word. Heart steady, hands calm. The kitchen was empty, thank God. I opened the fridge, grabbed a soda, and let the coldness ground me. I breathed in, slow, controlled, because I knew what was coming next. When I returned to the backyard, everything felt subtly wrong. People who'd ignored me earlier were now giving me these forced, polite smiles. Aunt Liz, the queen of passive-aggressive curiosity, watched me from across the patio with thinly veiled interest. I leaned against one of the posts, letting the scene play out. And then Andrew approached. He didn't look smug anymore. He looked threatened. "Serena," he said, voice tight. "Andrew." He cleared his throat. "So, do you want to explain this?" He held up his phone. On the screen was a Forbes article, a profile piece about me. A photo of me in a navy blazer. My full name, my company Signalbox Technologies. A short blurb. The quiet genius behind one of the fastest growing authentication platforms in the industry. I shrugged lightly. "You Googled me. Guess you found out." He wasn't amused. You let everyone think you were broke, that you were some delivery girl." "I never said I was broke," I replied softly. "I just never corrected you." His jaw flexed. "You made us look stupid. You didn't need my help with that." He glared, about to say more, when Uncle Rick wandered over. "Everything all right here?" he asked, tone full of false concern and real curiosity. Andrew opened his mouth, but I beat him to it. "Everything's fine." Rick smirked. "Didn't know you were some big tech hotshot, Serena." I sipped my drink. People never ask. His eyes glittered with something hungry, calculating, like he'd just spotted a golden ticket. And that's when I knew this night was only the beginning. By the time I got home from the engagement party that night, I didn't turn on any lights. I just dropped my bag on the floor, leaned against the closed door, and let the quiet wrap around me like a blanket I hadn't felt in years. People think anger is loud, but they've never met the kind that grows in silence. My phone buzzed nonstop, missed calls, texts, voicemails I didn't bother listening to. I already knew what they wanted. When people realize they've misjudged you, they don't apologize. They scramble to reposition themselves, to align with the new version of you, the one that benefits them. I washed my face, changed into an old hoodie, and sat at the edge of my bed. The day had shaken loose so many memories I'd spent years burying, especially the fall, the one no one knew about, the one they never cared to ask about. 2 years after graduating with my degree in computer science, I thought I had my path set. I'd joined a fintech startup that looked promising, big dreams, brilliant team, and the kind of idealistic energy only 20-somethings with no sense of financial mortality could have. I'd thrown my whole soul into it. Late nights, early mornings, no weekends, no dating, no social life, just pure, unfiltered ambition. And then everything I'd built my life around evaporated. Funding collapsed. Investors pulled out. The CEO ghosted half the employees. I woke up one morning jobless, savings drained from months of unpaid, delayed payroll and rent, looming over my head like a guillotine. I'd never felt smaller. Not because I failed, but because failure wasn't supposed to happen to people like me, hard-working, disciplined, determined women who did everything right. I hadn't told my family. I didn't want their pity, especially not Rick's smug sympathy or Andrew's condescending nods. So I swallowed my pride and took the first job that paid in cash pizza delivery. People think those jobs are easy, but you learn a lot about humanity when you're handing people food through a cracked car window at 2 a.m. in freezing rain. You learn humility. You learn endurance. You learn who you are without the titles, without the applause, without the pretty LinkedIn narratives. And you learn the truth about people. The poor tip better than the rich. The tired are kinder than the comfortable. The overlooked see more than the ones who stand under spotlights. While my family pictured me wasting my potential, I was actually rebuilding it in a way they never understood. Every shift between runs, I scribbled ideas in a beat-up notebook, half-formed concepts, security models, potential algorithms. I'd sit in my old Honda with the heater barely working, parked behind the pizza shop dumpster, writing until my fingers cramped. One night after a 12-hour shift, I went home, opened my laptop, and started prototyping an authentication system. I didn't even know what it would become, just that it filled a hole inside me, carved by failure and expectation. It took months, then a year, then more. But eventually, something stuck. Signalbox Technology began in the basement of a friend's townhouse with 2 laptops, 1 fan that barely rotated, 3 people who believed in me, and dreams held together with duct tape. We worked until dawn, napped on beanbags, burned noodles because none of us remembered to set timers, survived on hope and caffeine. And somehow it grew. A beta client signed on, then a recommendation, then a government inquiry, then the first real investor. I never posted any of it online, never broadcast the grind, never bragged about the struggles, I'd spent too long being underestimated to give anyone front row seats to my comeback. And besides, success doesn't mean much if the people you're proving yourself to don't care enough to notice. 2 days after the engagement party, the calls began. Uncle Rick, Aunt Liz, cousins who hadn't texted me in months. Numbers I didn't recognize. Suddenly, everyone wanted to talk. Just checking in, Serena. Heard you've been busy. We should catch up. I always knew you'd do something big. We're so proud of you. Proud they didn't even know me. I rejected all the calls, deleted the voicemails, ignored the texts. But then my mom called, and something in her voice, the heaviness, the caution told me to answer. Serena, she whispered, like she was afraid someone would overhear. Did you know what they're saying? I closed my eyes. What now? She hesitated. That was never a good sign. They're telling people that you're funding Andrew's wedding. My stomach dropped. What I said sharper than I intended. I haven't even RSVP'd. I know, she murmured. Rick told his friends you're paying for the venue and the catering, and that you offered to make a speech about family unity and gratitude. Gratitude for what? For the years they ignored me, for mocking me every holiday, for turning my silence into a character flaw. My blood ran cold. She kept talking, voice trembling. They've been telling everyone that you wanted to help the family, that you insisted, that you're excited to be part of the celebration. I stood up so fast my chair scraped the floor. They're using me, I whispered. Mom inhaled shakily. Serena, he's my nephew, but even I didn't believe him. I just wanted you to know before things got worse. Worse than this, I said bitterly. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. We both knew exactly what she meant. My family, especially Rick, never did anything small. Mom said softly, I'm worried they'll drag you into something you don't want. I sank into the couch, hand pressed to my forehead. They weren't just exploiting rumors. They were rewriting reality, using my name to elevate themselves. And that hurt more than any insult ever had. After we hung up, I sat there in the dim light, staring at nothing, thinking about my life, thinking about the years I spent alone rebuilding myself, thinking about how easily they tried to claim it now. It wasn't anger that filled me, it was clarity. They hadn't changed. They'd simply recalibrated. And they assumed I'd play along. They assumed I'd stay quiet, harmless, convenient. They assumed wrong. That night I opened my laptop. I made a list. Names, connections, investors, people I trusted, people Andrew lied to. And at the bottom, I wrote one final line. No more silence. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry, though. The anger was there, humming under my skin like static. But because something inside me had finally clicked into place. A shift, a realignment. For the first time in years, I wasn't reacting to my family. I was acting. At 2 a.m., I grabbed my laptop and sat on the floor, back against my bed hair, tied up in a loose knot. The glow of the screen lit the room in soft blues and whites. On the right side of the screen was the list I'd created earlier. On the left side, a blank page. I started typing. Not a revenge plan, not a manifesto, just the truth. Everything I knew about what Andrew had been doing. Everything I suspected. Everything that felt off. Then I began connecting the dots. I called Evan, one of my co-founders. It rang twice before he answered, groggy, confused, but worried enough to be fully awake within seconds. Serena. It's 2:30 in the morning. What's wrong? I need your help, I said. He didn't even hesitate. Tell me what you need. I explained everything, the engagement party, the rumors, the wedding, the way Andrew and Rick were using my name as a financial prop. Evan didn't interrupt once. When I finished, there was silence. Heavy silence. Then, okay, who else do we need to loop in? That's the thing about people who build with you from nothing. They don't need explanations. They trust you because they saw you when you were exhausted, hungry, terrified, doubting everything. They trust you because they earned the right to stand beside you. I listed a few names. He nodded. I'll start checking the database for suspicious mentions of your name, or the company, he said. If he used your identity to solicit funds, we'll find traces. Thanks, I whispered. Hey, he said, voice softening. They underestimated the wrong woman. I almost laughed. Almost. Next, I called Lena, an early investor, one of the first people who believed in me when everyone else thought Signalbox was a pipe dream. She answered immediately because she was always awake before dawn, living on espresso and brilliant chaos. Serena, you okay? No, I said honestly. Give me the short version, she demanded. I told her, every detail. By the time I finished, she was pacing. I could hear the echo through the phone heels hitting hardwood in quick, sharp taps. Unacceptable, she said. Completely unacceptable. You built this company with your own damn hands. He doesn't get to weaponize your reputation. I'm not sure what to do yet, I admitted. I do, she said. Tell me the names of everyone he lied to. I read her the list I had so far. She swore under her breath. Serena, that's fraud. On multiple levels. If he implied you approved any investment opportunities, he did. And if Rick backed those lies, he did. She stopped pacing. Do you want to pursue legal action? I closed my eyes. Imagine my father, gentle, calm, wise, sitting across from me, like he used to in our old kitchen. He'd say, take the path that lets you sleep at night. I don't want to destroy anyone, I said. I just can't let them get away with this. Then we gather evidence, she said. Quietly, thoroughly, professionally. Over the next 8 hours, I made calls I never thought I'd have to make. One of them was to Mark, the real estate developer Andrew had convinced to invest early in what he falsely claimed was our private round. I dialed his number, not sure he'd answer a stranger at 9 in the morning, but he picked up. Hello? Hi, Mark. This is Serena Hale. Silence, then a shaky exhale. Oh, he said softly. I was hoping I'd hear from you. Did Andrew tell you he was working with me? I asked. Yes. His voice cracked a bit. He said you trusted him, that he was your inside connection. My jaw tightened. None of that is true. Another silence, this one heavier. I thought so, he said. I kept waiting for paperwork, or a follow-up call, or anything. But he kept delaying, and now I feel like an idiot. You're not an idiot, I said gently. You're a decent person who trusted someone who didn't deserve it. He let out a breath that sounded like it had been held for months. I put in $25,000. I know, I said, and we're going to help you get it back. Legally. Properly. You won't be alone in this. You don't have to do that, he said. You don't owe me anything. But I did. Not legally, not technically, but morally. People like Mark were the reason I survived the lowest parts of my life. The people who believed in something bigger than their ego. The people who trusted quietly. We'll fix it, I promised. That night I gathered everything, emails, screenshots, investor logs, and organized them into a clean folder. Then I printed the most essential pages, clipped them neatly, and slid them into a heavy white envelope. On the front, in black ink, I wrote, for Rick Cartwright. Not Andrew, not Liz, not the family. Because Rick was the root. He was the one who weaponized the lie, the one who spread it, the one who orchestrated the narrative. And the only way to dismantle a rotten foundation is to strike at the base. The night before the wedding, I booked a simple hotel room in a quiet town, despite receiving a second urgent text from Aunt Liz begging me to stay at the Vineyard Resort with family. Family. The word felt sour in my mouth. I ignored it and packed my bag. Just a plain black suit, clean white blouse, minimal makeup, hair straight pinned behind my ears. Not flashy, not dramatic, not impressive. Just me. At the bottom of my suitcase, I placed the envelope. It looked harmless, like an unassuming letter. But I knew better. It was a fuse, a quiet, paper-thin fuse. And tomorrow, someone was going to light it. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and painfully bright, the kind of sky that almost felt mocking. I got ready in silence, tying my hair into a low, clean knot. My suit jacket felt heavier than usual, not literally, but in the way clothes feel when you know you're walking straight into a battlefield dressed like a guest. The drive to the vineyard was long and winding. Rows of grapes stretched endlessly across the hills, all green, orderly, and deceptively peaceful. It almost calmed me. Almost. The parking lot was already full of luxury cars, every model screaming money or aspiration. I parked my modest sedan between two towering SUVs and stepped out, clutching the envelope inside my jacket. Walking toward the entrance, I passed guests in formal attire, sequins, pearls, sharp tuxedos. They glanced at me with the kind of polite curiosity that bordered on nosy. A few recognized me and waved with tight, rehearsed smiles, as if suddenly I was someone worth waving to. Inside the venue was stunning white roses spilling over glass vases, chandeliers glittering above marble floors, a string quartet warming up on a raised platform. It was the kind of space designed for perfect photos, not real moments. I found my seat near the middle of the room, not too close to the altar, not too far. Neutral ground, safe ground. But there was no such thing as safe around my family. The ceremony was fine. That's the best word for it. Tessa looked beautiful. Perfect posture, perfect dress, perfect smile. Andrew looked smug in a way that only men who have never been truly challenged can manage. His groomsmen were loud, proud, and slightly over-perfumed. Their vows were the copy and paste Pinterest variety. I promise to love you through every season. You've made me a better person. I can't imagine life without you. Lovely words. Empty for someone like him. People sniffled, people smiled, photos were taken, applause thundered. But through it all, Andrew never once met my eyes. Coward. The reception was a different beast entirely. The vineyard's ballroom glowed with golden lights strung across wooden beams, and servers glided between tables with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Guests clustered into circles, exchanging exaggerated compliments and calculated small talk. By the time I walked in, the energy had shifted loud, theatrical, performative, the kind of atmosphere Andrew thrived in. Uncle Rick was holding court near the center, laughing boisterously at something his friend said, clapping shoulders, hugging old acquaintances with overdone enthusiasm. When he spotted me, his grin stretched wide too wide. "Serena, glad you could make it," he said, giving me a side hug, as if we'd always been close. The scent of whiskey clung to him. I stepped back politely. Wouldn't miss it. "You look great," he said, scanning my outfit in a way that was more appraisal than compliment. "Professional, successful," he winked. "Just like family." Family, right. I moved away before he could say more, finding a spot near a wooden pillar and staying quiet. Observing. Waiting. It didn't take long before Andrew approached. He appeared beside me with the kind of smile people wear when they think they've won. "Serena," he said warmly, arms out, as if he had any right to embrace me. "I'm really glad you're here." I nodded once. "Andrew." "Listen," he said, lowering his voice. "I know there was some weirdness after the engagement party, but I want you to know there are no hard feelings. Miscommunication happens." Miscommunication. That word again. They wielded it like a shield against accountability. I stared at him. "You told people I was funding your wedding." His smile flickered. "Ah, that. Look, that wasn't me. That was my parents. You know how they exaggerate." "Did you correct them?" I asked. He hesitated. That was all the answer I needed. He leaned in slightly. "Serena, come on. This is a big day for me. For all of us. It's good optics for the family if we show unity. And I mean, be honest, it's not bad press for you either." There it was. He thought I was an asset, a prop, a tool. "What exactly do you want from me?" I asked calmly. His eyes brightened. He really believed I was stepping into his script. Acknowledgement. A moment. Maybe a small toast later. Just something that ties your success back to the family. Mutual benefit. I smiled, slowly, softly. "Don't worry, Andrew," I said. "I have something special planned." His face lit up with relief. "I knew you'd come around." I walked away before he could finish the sentence. If he noticed the envelope pressing against the fabric of my jacket as I moved, he didn't understand what it meant. Not yet. Dinner passed in a haze of clinking silverware and hollow conversation. Toasts began Tessa's father, then the maid of honor, then Uncle Rick. Rick's speech was the usual self-congratulatory performance. He talked about family triumph, hard work, running in our blood, supporting one another through thick and thin. Twice he mentioned how proud he was of me. Not by name, never by name, but with a tone that suggested ownership, possession, as if my wins somehow belonged to him. Then Andrew stood champagne glass, raised smile gleaming for the cameras. "I'd like to give a special thanks," he said, turning toward me. My chest tightened. "To my cousin Serena," he continued. "Most of you know her as the brilliant mind behind Signalbox. Her support has meant the world to us. Truly, we wouldn't be here without her." People clapped, cheered, nodded approvingly. I didn't. Instead, I stood up, slowly pushed my chair back, and began walking toward the head table. The room fell into a soft, uneasy quiet. Not silence exactly, but the silence that follows a shift in gravity. Rick's smile brightened as I approached. He thought I was delivering the speech of gratitude he'd designed in his head. I reached the table, slipped my hand inside my jacket, and pulled out the white envelope. I placed it gently on the table in front of Rick. "For you," I said quietly. He blinked. "What's this?" I leaned in, my voice soft but sharp enough to cut through bone. "Proof." Then I turned around and walked away. No microphone, no raised voice, no dramatic flourish. Just truth delivered in the calmest way possible. Behind me I heard nothing at first. Then pages rustling. Then silence more suffocating than sound. Then a choked exhale. Then Tessa's gasp. Then Andrew's frantic whisper something like, "What is this?" Then chairs scraping violently. Then the music stopping mid-note. I didn't turn around. There are moments you're meant to witness, and moments you're meant to walk away from. This belonged to them. By the time I reached the vineyard doors, the cold night air rushed against my skin, clearing the last remnants of adrenaline from my veins. I stepped outside, letting the hum of string lights and murmured panic fade behind me. Out here, everything was still, quiet. almost peaceful. It was done, or so I thought. Because fallout doesn't happen all at once. It happens in waves, slow at first, then relentless. The next morning, I woke up in my hotel room to 3 things. 12 missed calls from Uncle Rick. A text from Mom asking if I was okay. A headline notification from a business news app. That last one made my heart sink. I opened it. Local insurance employee placed on immediate leave after alleged investment misrepresentation. Andrew. Of course it was Andrew. The article didn't mention him by name yet, but I recognized the company, and I recognized the phrasing, pending internal review, potential misuse of association with known tech founders, unconfirmed personal fundraising activities. Someone at the wedding had talked. Not me. I hadn't spoken a word publicly. But truth has a way of leaking when the people who hid it suddenly need to save themselves. By noon, the calls doubled. Rick, Liz, even Andrew. Though I let every call go unanswered. I didn't need to hear their version of the story. I'd watched enough years of their excuses to know the format by heart. It was all a misunderstanding. We didn't mean harm. You didn't have to overreact. We're family. Fix this for us. No, not this time. Instead, I drove home, made myself tea, and waited. An hour later, Mom knocked on my apartment door. She looked tired, not angry, not confused, just tired. The kind of tired only a mother can have when her child and her family are at war and she's standing helplessly in the crossfire. "Can I come in?" she asked. I nodded. She entered quietly and sat on the couch, sipping tea from the mug I handed her. She didn't speak for a long time. Finally, she whispered, "You really shook them." I told the truth, I said. "I know," she said. "And I'm not angry. I just wish it didn't have to be this way." That made something in my chest ache. "Do you regret it?" she asked softly. I swallowed. "No," I said, voice steady. "I regret letting it go on for so long." Her eyes glistened, not with disappointment, just sadness. A quiet mourning for the illusion of family harmony she'd held on to for years. She reached for my hand. "I should have protected you from all of that sooner." For a moment, I felt like a little girl again, safe, warm, loved. The opposite of how Rick and Andrew made me feel. "It's okay, Mom," I said. "I protected myself." That week, everything snowballed. On Monday, Andrew was officially suspended. On Tuesday, HR started interviewing his colleagues about the investment opportunities he'd pitched. On Wednesday, Mark, the real estate developer, filed his case with the SEC. By Friday, Andrew was fired. His employee page was wiped clean within hours. No soft farewell post, no thank you for your service, just gone. A digital erasure. I found out from Evan, who forwarded me a screenshot with a short message, "Told you they underestimated the wrong woman." Tessa moved out 2 weeks after the wedding. I never saw her again, but one afternoon, a thin white envelope appeared in my mailbox. Inside was a handwritten card. "Thank you for showing me who he really was, Tessa." No dramatic paragraphs, no apologies, just truth. And I respected that. Uncle Rick's downfall was slower but far more brutal. It turned out several of the men he'd bragged to about my support had made quiet agreements with him based on that lie. Businessmen who now realized they'd been misled. One pulled out of a joint venture with him. Another refused to renew a contract. A third leaked a story to a local business reporter. Soon whispers filled the community. Rick exaggerated. Rick lied. Rick isn't as connected as he claims. Rick tricked us. And Rick, he spiraled. Not publicly, he wasn't that kind of man. But I knew pride was an ego's oxygen, and his had been cut off at the source. The last I heard, he'd downsized his office, sold a boat he'd bragged about for years, and quietly tried to rebuild his reputation. Then again, it's hard to rebuild when people finally see the cracks. One evening, a month after the wedding, I went for a walk near the waterfront, watching the lights ripple across the water. My phone buzzed with a new message. "Mom. Again." "He asked if you'd talk to him," she wrote, "to clear the air." I stopped walking, staring at the text. "Clear the air," as if the air hadn't been clean until I exposed the smog. I typed back, "No." A pause. Then, "I thought so. I told him not to expect anything." I smiled faintly. Mom wasn't picking sides anymore. She was simply respecting boundaries. And for the first time in a long time, I felt understood. My life, meanwhile, didn't fall apart the way they hoped it might. Signal Box grew. We secured a major government contract, one that tripled our valuation and allowed us to expand our team. I hired 2 more engineers, a project manager, a cybersecurity specialist. And when we celebrated signing the contract, I invited the people who mattered. Evan, Lena, the early co-founders, even 3 former co-workers from the pizza place. People who had known me when I was invisible. People who saw me when my own blood didn't. We toasted with cheap champagne and messy pizza, and someone joked, "Imagine explaining this night to your uncle." I laughed. A real full laugh. The kind that didn't crumble halfway through. Because somewhere along the way, I had realized something important. Success doesn't heal the wounds family leaves. It doesn't erase betrayal. It doesn't turn mockery into support. But it can build a new world, a healthier one, a quieter one where the people around you don't doubt you, don't use you, don't rewrite you, one where you get to breathe. Late one night, as I finished reviewing a proposal, I thought back to the vineyard, the string lights, the silence, the moment Rick opened the envelope. People ask what revenge feels like. But the truth, the real truth, sometimes revenge isn't fire, it isn't rage, it isn't spectacle. Sometimes revenge is just clarity. The clarity of knowing you don't owe anyone your silence. The clarity of seeing people without their masks. The clarity of letting the truth speak for you. And the clarity of walking away head high, back straight, while they scramble to understand what went wrong. Because nothing went wrong. They simply underestimated the wrong woman. Some endings are loud. Mine wasn't. Mine was the kind of ending that settles softly like dust in sunlight or snow on an empty street. Quiet, gentle, almost peaceful. But beneath that softness is something sharper. Something that finally makes sense. Something earned. Months passed after the wedding, and life moved forward with a rhythm so steady, it felt like a completely different universe from the chaos I grew up in. I'd wake up in my apartment, sunlight spilling across the hardwood floor, the hum of the city drifting through the window. I'd make coffee water, the plants I kept forgetting to care for, and settle at my desk overlooking the skyline. It was ordinary, simple, uncomplicated. And for the first time in years, that ordinariness felt like freedom. Signal Box had become a living, breathing thing, bigger than me, bigger than anything I'd imagined in those nights working in a freezing basement with a borrowed laptop and hope that barely held itself together. The government contract had pushed us into a new realm. Our office expanded into 3 new floors. We hired talent I used to only dream of attracting engineers, analysts, product leads, cybersecurity experts, people who chose us not because of hype, but because they believed in the work. Some days, I still found myself walking through the office late at night, lights dimmed, servers, humming softly, wondering how I'd gotten here, wondering how that girl delivering pizzas at 2 a.m. became this woman who led a team of 70. It wasn't pride that filled me. It was something quieter, something steadier. It was dignity. One afternoon, while reviewing a client audit with Evan, he leaned back in his chair and said, "You've changed." I looked up. "How?" "You're lighter," he said. "You used to carry everything like it was life or death. Now it's like you finally put down a weight you didn't know you were holding." I didn't respond, but he was right. My family's expectations, spoken and unspoken, had followed me like a shadow for years. A shadow that whispered, "Be less. Don't outgrow us. Don't become someone we can't recognize." The night I handed Rick that envelope, I stepped out of that shadow. I didn't crush it. I didn't destroy it. I simply refused to stand inside it anymore. I had imagined that after everything imploded, I would feel victorious, vindicated, triumphant. Instead, I felt free. There's a difference between winning and being free. Winning means someone else lost. Freedom means no one else's opinion controls your life. I wasn't chasing approval anymore. I wasn't performing anymore. I wasn't waiting to be seen. I was simply living. Of course, life wasn't all perfect sunsets and blooming independence. There were hard days, exhausting meetings, technical failures, team disagreements, stress that crept into my bones and refused to leave. But even on the hardest days, I still felt more grounded than I ever did standing in a room full of relatives who pretended they knew me. Because these challenges were real, earned, honest. I wasn't fighting ghosts anymore. I wasn't defending myself against people determined to misunderstand me. I was building something that mattered. One evening, months later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It wasn't Rick. It wasn't Andrew. It wasn't anyone from the fallout. It was Tessa. Her voice was steady but gentle. "Hi, Serena. I hope this isn't a bad time." "Not at all," I said. "I wanted to tell you something." She paused. "I got accepted into grad school, counseling psychology." I blinked. "Tessa, that's amazing." She laughed softly. "After everything, I needed to understand why people lie the way they do, why they perform, why they hurt the people closest to them. And I realized I'd spent so long being told what to think, what to feel, what to be, that I didn't know myself anymore. I understood that more than she realized. She exhaled. You changed my life that night, not because of the drama, but because you told the truth even when it was painful. You didn't let anyone rewrite your story, a beat. I'm trying to do the same. Good, I said softly. You deserve that. Thank you, she whispered. And I'm sorry for anything I didn't see. You see it now, I said. That's enough. When she hung up, I sat there in silence, grateful, strangely proud, and unexpectedly emotional. What happened at the wedding hadn't just exposed lies, it had freed people trapped inside them. And that included me. A few days later, Mom visited my apartment carrying homemade soup in a small envelope. We sat at my kitchen table while she stirred honey into her tea. I saw Rick yesterday, she said suddenly. I stiffened. Oh. He asked about you, she said. Wanted to know if you were still angry. I almost laughed. Angry, try, relieved. Try, done. Try, finished with the cycle. What did you tell him, I asked. I told him, she said, setting down her spoon, that you're building a good life, and you're finally happy, and that he shouldn't expect to be a part of it unless he changes. My breath hitched. Mom had never said anything like that before, not to him, not to me. She reached across the table and took my hand. Serena, I know I didn't always protect you from them, but I see everything now, and I'm proud of you. Not because of your success, because you stopped letting people hurt you. My eyes burned, but I didn't look away. I held her hand tighter, letting years of unsaid things settle quietly between us. Healing isn't loud either. It's gentle, soft, honest. A lot like this moment. As months turned into a year, the family drama became something distant, like a storm that had passed. It didn't disappear, but it no longer defined me. Rick never apologized. Andrew never reached out. The family group chat stayed eerily silent where my name used to be a punchline. And that was fine. Some people don't deserve a place in your new life simply because they existed in your old one. My world was different now, filled with people who lifted me, challenged me, trusted me, and believed in me, long before I believed in myself. Sometimes late at night, I'd sit on my balcony overlooking the city lights, thinking about everything that had happened. The insults, the dismissal, the lies, the quiet rebuilding, the envelope, the shattering at the wedding. And I'd smile, not out of revenge, not out of satisfaction, but out of peace. Because the truth wasn't just that I proved them wrong. The truth was that I proved myself right. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't destruction. It's rebuilding. It's rising. It's choosing yourself. It's building a life so full and rich and honest that their voices fade into nothing. Their doubts, their mockery, their expectations. Irrelevant. Because at the end of it all, I didn't need their approval, their validation, or their apology. I only needed my freedom. And I finally had it.